Hey guys, over the last year or so, at different times when Bitcoin has been in the news for different reasons, people have sent us links or have sort of suggested we make a video about it, mainly so they could have a venue to comment about the topic, I guess. But we haven't sort of touched it because it's economics, you know. Usually try and sort of general economics topics or general politics topics, try and stay out of it because it's pretty boring. I mean, some people find it interesting, that's fair enough, but bit of a heavy topic usually, economics and politics. The same on our Japan channel, sometimes people ask us to cover politics in Japan, and you know, we show the people in the funny coloured clothes standing on the street doing their politics thing. That's as close as we get to talking about Japanese politics. Other people can do it better than us, politics and economics, and we're not economists and we're not political analysts really, so but the Bitcoin thing, the Bitcoin's just passed $1,000 today. So again, we're not economists, but just a couple of things. One of the reasons that triggered this was this Bitcoin chart, this Bitcoin chart of its value against the US dollar, and the fact that it crossed the $1,000 mark today. Just want to go on record as saying, look out for the fall. Because those of you, even if you're not economists, everybody sort of knows that all sorts of currencies go up and down. And I think the Bitcoin one, a lot of people are attracted to the Bitcoin one for a number of reasons. Of course, it's sort of like a virtual currency we can use online, which means we can avoid tax with it and all sorts of stuff. You know, we can buy stuff and sell stuff. And you know, sort of trading, virtually like trading, isn't it? You can buy something with it and sell something for it, and you can have that going backwards and forwards, and don't have to pay any tax anywhere along the line, and it's getting a bit more mainstream. Is it not eBay? One of those other online shops has started accepting it, so there's a bit of it going around, and that's all good, and the fact that it's not regulated by any governments, that appeals to people as well. It's sort of like your radical person's currency, you know what I mean? Like people that want to sort of put their thumb up at the government, you know, we don't need governments, we'll make our own currency, you know. It's an interesting idea. And obviously there's a lot of people enjoying it, liking it, and those who had a lot of them saved up would be really happy at the moment with their value going up to 1,000 US. But, as we also know, there's a lot of governments who don't like it, and give lots of reasons for not liking it. One of the reasons that the US government gives for not liking it is they say that it's used for drug dealing, but that's pretty laughable considering that the most popular currency for big multinational drug deals is actually the US dollar. So saying that Bitcoin's used for drug dealing is a bit of drawing a long string, drawing a long bow, whatever that saying is. You know, sure, it probably is being used for drug dealing, but not nearly as much as the US dollar is, so that's a bit of bullshit there. The main reason that I think most governments don't like it would have to be the fact they can't get tax from it, would have to be it, wouldn't it? You know, they know that if people are heavily dealing in those things, using those Bitcoins instead of using currency, that the government doesn't have an opportunity to tax anybody. So that's obviously the main concern. But I think the fact that the governments don't like it doesn't really matter to us, does it? You know, the people who are using it. I'll just state by saying too, I don't have any. Okay, I don't have any Bitcoins. So the people, I think it's relevant. The people declare that. So hang on, just let me follow the first one through. I think the fact that governments don't like them, people sort of like the fact that governments don't like them. So fuck you, government doesn't like it, well we don't care, we're going to use it anyway. But I think the problem with that is governments can make laws, and even though it's a cyber currency, a lot of people say, oh, the governments can't touch it. They have their ways, don't they? And I think more importantly is, even if they can't affect Bitcoin directly, they can affect it indirectly. Now, currencies, Bitcoin is a currency of sorts, and it's the same as stock markets and all sorts of things like that, isn't it? they really are affected by lots of different complicated things that normal people like us can't understand, and only economists can really follow the big picture maybe. But there's a few things about currencies and stock markets and things that is basically straight out human behaviour. And it's a thing about money that it motivates things like greed and a fear of losing money, and that sort of motivation that people have. It's a natural thing. And I think you guys would agree, it wouldn't matter how noble your thoughts were about Bitcoin, how good it is and important it is. If somebody told you, hey look, I know for a fact Bitcoin's going to drop from $1,000 US to 200 US tomorrow, would you keep your Bitcoins? Would you keep your Bitcoins just to support the Bitcoin, or would you bail out? And I think the biggest risk to Bitcoin is the government interference. And even if the governments or any governments directly interfering is impossible and that they can't really mess with it, by enacting laws that could affect it in some ways, I think that what the roll-on effect could be is people panic. And as people who follow currency markets and follow currency markets and follow stock markets and things, people panicking is the real cause of the problem. You know, the problems that we have in stock market collapses and things isn't really it's triggered by other things, but the biggest problem is the people panicking. And I think that's going to be Bitcoin's biggest threat. And I think that will be what will make the value at some stage. Bitcoin is going to take a huge drop, and it wouldn't surprise me if it happens soon. Now it's hit 1,000 US, but at some stage it's going to suddenly take a huge drop and suddenly plummet. And I think what will happen then is lots of people will panic and shed them, and that drop could be triggered by anything. But it's possible it could be triggered by a government like the US government enacting some new law. Even if it doesn't directly affect the Bitcoin, all it has to do is to make people fear that it could affect the Bitcoin, and they'll bail out. And if people start bailing out, more people will bail out, and everyone loses their nerve at some point, and they'll bail out, and then the value will plummet. And I think that's probably what we'll see. A lot of people seem to think that Bitcoin can last forever, and that there's no way it'll ever fail. That could be true. Who knows? Who knows? But I don't think it will. I think the chances that it's going to plummet at some stage, plummet in value, is really likely. Really, really likely. And the fact that it could totally fail I think also has to be remembered as a possibility. I think so. Lots of people think it won't. But I think there's a good possibility that at some stage it could totally fail, and it could just be a memory. It could be one of those things that 10 years from now we go, remember Bitcoin? Remember Bitcoin? I think so. I think so. So, like it started saying, well, I'm not an economist, so I don't know. I don't know. But I know human behaviour. I've seen this sort of thing before with all sorts of things. And humans panic. And money's a big one. And Bitcoin's not really money; it's a currency, but it has the same effect on people as money, and that can. So yes, so the bottom line is I'm predicting a big drop in Bitcoin at some stage, a big plummet in value of the Bitcoin being in the news at some stage. Maybe tomorrow or maybe next year, but I think it's inevitable. It's got to happen, hasn't it? So if it was me, I'm not interested in it in the slightest, but if someone was interested in them or wanted them, I'd suggest, same as with stock markets and things like that, don't put any more money into it than you'd be prepared to lose. I think it'd be a good strategy. If you're just using it to buy and sell CDs or books online or something, people still buy CDs. People still buy books. But I think that would be a good strategy. Same as the stock market. Same as any sort of risky thing that you can't control like that can plummet. I wouldn't buy any more Bitcoins than I could afford to lose. If you can afford to lose $50 worth or $100 worth or $1,000 worth, then buy that. But if you can't afford to lose, more than that, I wouldn't invest more than that. Interesting thing too, I sort of started touching this before, it suddenly came to mind. I actually saw this $1,000 thing on RT, on Russia TV, and Interesting. Russia TV actually did a story on Bitcoin a couple of months ago, and it was really negative, and it was really bashing the shit out of it and saying that it was going to fail and it was no good, and interviewed a couple of people, and the title of that video was really slamming Bitcoin. It was really negative about Bitcoin. And interestingly, the video stayed up, but they changed the title, and they actually changed the title and made it really positive, which was really interesting. It was like a 180-degree turn. It went from being a title that suggested Bitcoin bound to fail or something like that, and they changed it and they made it Bitcoin surviving well or something like that. And it was a 180-degree turn in the meaning of the heading of the video, the title of the video, which is really strange. And then since then, they've made a positive story about Bitcoin almost every week. And you can see for yourself, RT, Russia Today, Russian TV, Russia Today, on YouTube. Have a look. And all the stories they've done the last few weeks since that one have all been really positive. And interesting, this is something that worth thinking about, I think, is that they interview these sort of nobody bloggers, you know, and here's Joe Blogs from the, or John Smith from the Wooden Table Institute. You know, some nobody dude sitting in his house talking to a camera. So usually they use Skype, and they do these interviews with these nobody people that you've never heard of before, but they're from the the Wooden Table Institute, or there's some institute, and it's just some dude. It's just some dude with a website sitting in his house. Talking on YouTube. Russia Today do it too much. I think there's some good things about that news organisation, but one thing they fail on is these people that they interview. They're just nobodies. It's like they do an internet search, internet search on Bitcoin, come up with this dude and do an interview with him on Skype, and the guy's sitting there going on about how fabulous Bitcoin is and how it's a wonderful thing, and the reporter said, and there's so many mainstream organisations accepting Bitcoin now. And then the guy said, yes, we accept Bitcoin donations as well. Right? Which is interesting on a few levels. But most importantly is here he is sitting there talking about how great Bitcoin is. Now, again, people who are familiar with the stock market are aware of that style thing as well, that usually if people are giving stock market advice or something like that on mainstream television, usually they have to declare their interests because they can affect, mainstream media can affect the value of these things. Someone watches a story about how wonderful Bitcoin is, if a few thousand people watch a story about how wonderful Bitcoin is and then get on the net and buy a whole heap of them, it can bump the value up. And of course, people who own Bitcoins aren't going to say negative things about them because they don't want, obviously if you've got Bitcoins and people talk negatively about Bitcoins, the value of them drops because people go, oh really? Bitcoin's going to fall over, oh well, I better sell them, and the value drops. So people who own Bitcoins want to say positive things about Bitcoins. It's also, of course, it's a two-way street. Also, of course, people who think Bitcoins are good are the people who buy Bitcoins. So it's the other side of the coin as well. If you didn't think Bitcoins were secure or didn't think they were a good idea, you wouldn't buy them. So that's true as well. That's true as well. But it's a cycle, isn't it? You think they're good, then you buy them. But after you've bought them and you own them, of course you're going to keep saying that they're good. I'm talking about when you're talking to the media, when you're talking to the world. If you're talking to tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people and you own them, it's the same as you see guys, the chairman of the board of some big company, and they ask him about how the company's doing. Of course he's going to say positive things. Oh, well, it's a bit tough at the moment, but we'll be fine. It's going to improve. We'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Because he doesn't want everybody to sell their shares. So it's the same thing. So I know some of you guys that are really switched on about stuff like this, probably everything that's just been said could have been said in about 30 seconds for you guys. I know, it's all fairly basic economics, isn't it? But for those of us who aren't economics people, this sort of thing takes a bit more thinking, and But I think also too, I think with things like economics, with things like currencies and things like stock markets and things, there is all that economic stuff that's pretty boring to most of us. But I think there's a lot of human behaviour involved. And I think that things like the Bitcoin, it's interesting to watch because it really is human behaviour. You know, and it's been booming the last few months, you know, that it's big snowball. And I think there's a lot of, it's an activists and anti-establishment people and all sorts of people, I think, we're highly motivated to buy into it. Some people purely for economic reasons that think it's a good investment or, you know, a good tool to use on the internet. But I think there's a lot of protest type people that are buying it to use it because they want to put their finger up to the governments, which is all cool. But I think it'll just be interesting to see because the same sort of human behaviours that motivate people to get into it will be the similar sort of human behaviours that will motivate people to get out of it. And if it starts to collapse, it'll really collapse. So yes, looking into the crystal ball, I see Bitcoin collapsing to $200. It's $1,000 US at the moment. Let's watch it collapse to $200 at some stage, possibly, or let's see if it disappears altogether at some stage in the future. It's possible. Could end up just being a fond memory. Oh, I remember that. Remember that 10 years ago? What was it called? The shit coin? That's probably what they'll call it if it collapses. People that owned it, if it collapses, they'll probably call it the shit coin, won't they? The bloody shit coin. Shit coin collapses. Is that the name of this video? Maybe that's the title of this video. Anyway, interested to hear your opinions. And those economists want to discuss this, please feel free. Please excuse the rest of us, we've got other things to do. But yeah, interested to hear what Joe Public thinks of the Bitcoin. Anybody got them? Anyone got them? Has anyone got them? What do you use them for? Yeah. Tell us something we don't know about Bitcoin. More videos coming soon.